Okay, good morning. Today I wanted to talk about Fast Food Nation again. You can see my book has all these post-its and notes and stuff, but it's such a powerful book, and chapter 6 is entitled On the Range. And I thought it was fun because for a while I used to only eat chicken if I went for fast food. I'd be like, oh, that's healthier, okay? And I remember my son, he really liked chicken McNuggets when he was little. And I was thinking, oh, that's probably healthier than the beef. But you find out in the chapter 6, On the Range, by Eric Schlosser of Fast Food Nation, that that is not the case. And he uses Hank the rancher as an archetype of sort of the old school rancher. This is on page 136 if you want to follow along in the book. But he really warned against raping the land. That was the quote. Very provocative connotation and harsh. But he took care of his land and he took care of his livestock. And it was kind of sad when he was describing, driving around and getting the tour of his land and seeing the stock car racing and seeing what the stock car racing had done to that area. And then on page 136, talks about how it's a new trust. Over the last 20 years, he says, about 500,000 ranchers sold off their cattle and quit the business. Okay. Without receiving a fraction of the public attention given to the northwestern spotted owl, America's independent cattlemen have truly become an endangered species. So they become an endangered species, even more so than the spotted owl. Okay, there was a big talk about the spotted owl when I was in high school, growing up in Oregon, and how it was endangered and how the timber industry was affecting it. But the independent cattle rancher is now an endangered species. And this chapter talks a lot about beef pricing and monopolies and trusts and price fixing. So it's really interesting because you learn so much about like corporations and the corporate side, and you wouldn't really think of that when you think of cattle ranching. And it made me think of the prompt from 2008. I'll pull it up. Okay. And it was about corporate sponsorships and corporate partnerships. So I don't want you to think like, oh, why are we, for my class, why are we reading Fast Food Nation, or how is Fast Food Nation relevant to the AP exam? There's going to be opportunities on the AP English Lang exam to argue. And the more evidence you have from your outside knowledge on various topics, the better equipped you'll be for May 14th. Okay, you can see this one is about how we maybe need corporate partnerships in cash-strapped schools. A lot of schools, like we live in SoCal, so LA Unified is full of sort of cash-strapped high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and the corporate infusion of cash could help them out. So they ask you in 2008 to do the pros and cons, okay, of that. Still irrelevant today. And it's funny too, because I was scrolling through to get to the argument, and I saw that the penny is the synthesis for this one. And of course, that's something that was discussed just recently in the news. President Trump has talked about maybe getting rid of the penny, and that was the synthesis argument back then. But back to the book. I like the section, The Breasts of Mr. McDonald. That's sort of a clever pun. And this is where we learn that sadly, if you're a Chicken McNugget fan, Chicken McNuggets, this is page 140, are widely popular among young children, as they were Jacob Mooney, and contain twice as much fat per ounce as a hamburger. Now, I wonder what the stats are for the Chicken McNuggets at Chick-fil-A, because those are really good, okay, if you haven't tried them. So there was a shift. In 92, American consumption of chicken for the first time surpassed the consumption of beef. Okay, chicken was taking over. And then some of these ranchers, you can fast forward to captives and the section on 142. you see some of these ranches are getting pushed out by the big conglomerates, especially IBP. So if you're in my class, make sure you know about IBP. And there were lawsuits and there were claims that IBP, this is top of 144, had violated the Packers and Stockyards Act through a wide variety of anti-competitive tactics. Okay, so they didn't like competition. They wanted to get rid of the competition. And the irony here, as he uses Colorado Springs again as an archetype for America, is that even at these high schools he visits and talks to students, very few of them are cowboys anymore. And then sadly, you find out at the end, like at one point at the beginning of the chapter, you're like, oh wow, he's like, he could totally see Hank as like a senator or a politician. And then you realize at the end that Hank commits suicide. He was only 43. And he says, quote, this is on 146, it would be wrong to say that Hank's death was caused by the consolidating and homogenizing influence of the fast food chains, by monopoly power in the meatpacking industry, by depressed prices in the cattle market, by the economic forces bankrupting independent ranchers, by the tax laws that favor wealthy ranchers, by the unrelenting push of Colorado's real estate developers. Period. But it would not be entirely wrong. Period. So, just as we talk about the power of syntax, Eric Schlosser uses it here, but it would not be entirely wrong. Okay, I like that powerful declarative sentence. So, I hope you read chapter 6, and I hope you're enjoying Fast Food Nation.